Hello and welcome to this Friday's edition of the Octopus Movement podcast, where we celebrate the extraordinary multipotentiality of nonlinear thinkers and their undeniable impact on the world. I'm your host, Dr. Aidan Gillan-Bruns, and today I'm joined by Dr. Barbara Kleeb, doctor, musician, coach and polymath advocate, helping the world understand that polymaths aren't complex sums and helping polymaths understand that they are the complex sum of all their different interests. As a founding member of the Octopus Movement, Barbara's polymathematical suckers are all over the group's powerful vision. Linear meets non-linear, the human mycelium grows, unsolvable solved, and sustainable future blooms. And if you're trying to figure out the difference between a multipotentialite and a polymath, we can ask the expert herself. Barbara, what's the difference between a multipotentialite and a polymath?
Let me think. There isn't any.
There you go. Well, more importantly then, when did you realize that you're one of them?
I was named that. I had a concert. I had a stage presentation in the house of a friend with my own music that I recorded in Cuba, and he knew that I'm also a doctor, and I was also working in PwC at that time as to make a cultural change happen. And then he said, I think what you're doing right now is not a hobby. I think you're a polymath. And then, of course, like everyone else, I needed to Google that.
And when you Googled it, what did you find? Was it a big aha moment? Like, finally, there's a word that describes me. Had you been searching for a tribe? Was this now it?
No, it was just a description. I was happy that I understood the word. I have been called Renaissance woman as well. This is just who I am, and I found it just normal.
Well, it's great that you did, and you're in your work as a polymath coach and kind of advocate. Really, you help polymaths and multipotentialites kind of really accept their differences and kind of come to terms with them and really promote themselves and really capitalize on that. So you were able to do it. It was all kind of normal for you, but there seems to be a huge group of similar people who struggle to do the same thing. Why is that, do you think?
I think it's not because of them. It's because of how they are met. Because they don't fit into boxes, and they don't even know that it's a good thing to fit into a box, because they don't see a sense of a box, and me neither, because it's not how the world works.
Yeah, so they're not so much thinking of inside the box or outside the box solutions. Someone's looking for inside the box and they're thinking of salmon, for example, and it's just like, well, okay, we don't know how we got there. Yeah. Got it. So it's hard to met. So how do you coach multipotentialites, or how do you coach polymaths if the problem's not them, but how they're met? How do we coach, I say them, us, how do we coach ourselves, or how do we get coached to meet the world that's not reading us the way we need to be met, so to speak?
I think it's one thing is to, how can you perceive yourself as good, as whole, as non-flawed, as I don't say cool in the cool way of not warm, but as just as a great human who is most of the time happy, like I think a human should be joyful. And if this is not the case, then I find the steps to bring the person back to that state and to be in flow.
So what are the kind of common things then that would knock such a person out of flow, and the kind of knocks that they get to kind of take them out of that joyful state? Is there a pattern to it, or is it different each time?
I think it's often traumas that come from outside. For example, in a workplace where you're not understood and people think you're strange, but you're actually not. And then this is kind of a trauma, or where you come from at home might be a trauma, or just people thinking that you're not okay, or they can't cope with you.
So this kind of constant sense of othering and kind of always being kind of the nail that stands out taller than the rest and gets hit. That Japanese proverb, the nail that stands the tallest gets hit first. So I can see how polymaths would do that. So
And maybe if I may add another thing, polymaths could talk for a day often.
Yeah, I thought it was just because I was Irish, but it turns out it's because I'm a polymath. Two together, nightmare. Yeah.
They could talk for days because they have experienced so many things, and then they have to learn how to limit themselves, how to adapt what they say to a group or to a context where other people are also understanding what they're saying, and how to in a way fit in, even though I don't like this.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So is that a kind of a barrier to authenticity then? Is it difficult for a polymath to be fully themselves, fully authentic? Is that why the octopus movement is maybe such a powerful movement? Because all of a sudden there's a space we can just be all polymathematical everywhere, or I don't know what it is, polymathic, all over the place.
Being authentic and being able to focus.
Okay. So how do we achieve those then? How do we achieve authenticity and focus? Is there a way that we can achieve that in these separate contexts, or is it just in places when we're amongst our own tribe?
So one thing I think that takes away from being authentic is not thinking you're enough.
Yeah. Yes. There's Britain's #1 psychotherapist, as she, I don't know if it's self-proclaimed, but it was by Men's Health magazine anyway, declared her, Marissa Peer. She said the world, she's quite funny, but she said the number one problem is the problem of I am not enough, and that if people could just fix that, then the world would be a much better place. But it's difficult, I suppose, when you're navigating that. So what's your framework, or do you have a kind of a coaching approach that you've developed to kind of bring people back into that, or is it different every time? How do you get us back in the flow?
It is different for each person, and I've been studying medicine and coaching all of my life and gathered all the tools that I could get, and then I find a tool that suits the person that the person also likes to be coached with, or I just ask the right questions that raise the awareness of, no, it's not actually how I perceived it to be, and then the mindset shifts like automatically from this awareness.
And your background was as an obstetrician, I believe. So how often are we sticking the CTG on polymaths and saying no, contract your glutes? No, I don't know. I say that I was a medical doctor as well, but I'm now coach. So we have a similar path in that respect. But I wasn't in labor ward, but in a very different capacity.
I like the CTG. It schooled my intuition because it's only 50% accurate.
Oh well, yeah, that's true. That's
you
true.
need to know by intuition whether the baby is actually good or not if you see something.
And so, how big of a part does intuition play in knowing if your polymath is on the right path or not? How would a polymath intuitively know that they're getting back? What does that look like when they know that they're getting back to themselves? Because often it can separate you from your intuition. I think that kind of constant negative affirmation.
They just feel better. They feel energized. They feel I'm in the right place. I know where I can listen to my heart. They're not blocked in when they're saying something in their speech. They're feeling powerful because they are. Often they feel they kind of restrict their power because others perceive them too powerful. So that's a problem.
Yeah, so that's an interesting. When a polymath fully steps into themselves, then, and kind of starts embracing getting back into flow and really kind of stepping into their own power, I suppose. Again, how is that received in the workplace, for example? That imagine it not going down very well in many workplaces. It seems to be quite an intimidating thing. A polymath kind of being fully themselves to a lot of people. How can they kind of do it?
I think the environment is actually happy. If the polymath is fully embodied, grounded, then he or she doesn't talk so much, can listen better, because others are then interesting. Because the thing about polymaths is the whole world is interesting. but sometimes they kind of go into books or something like this. But actually, the whole world is interesting. The present is interesting, and everything raises their curiosity. So why not other people are talking?
Well, I mean, I've been worked in the corporate world. There's a lot of people that aren't that interesting, Barbara, in the corporate world. Like, I mean, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. I mean, even for the most dedicated polymaths, not everything. I'm sure there are some corporate environments that are even still. Whew. But yeah, sure. I suppose a really embodied polymath who's really in there but could maybe make an interest out of everything. Is over talking a trauma response? That's a really good question. I'm ADHD and I'm Irish. As again, two high risk factors for an overtalker. But is it a trauma response, Barbara? What do you think?
I think it's you have too much in your brain and you want to get it all out. But you don't have to get it all out because it can also dwell, part of it can dwell, and in the meantime, you can observe.
But if it doesn't go out, Barbara, where does it go? It just stays inside me and it just goes around and around.
Maybe it depends on how relaxed you are in the moment.
Oh, well, I haven't been relaxed since 1992, but yeah, possibly. Yeah, I'm sure that's got a lot to do with this. So moving into looking at the octopus movements, the octopus movements vision, so linear meets non-linear. It sounds then what we're bringing the linear of the non-polymath into contact with the non-linear of the polymath. So the linears of the non-polymath with the non-linear of the polymath. You with me? So it sounds like that's the kind of tough intersection. How do you, as a polymath, advocate for us polymaths to the non-polymaths? And how can we do it better for ourselves when you're not around?
Because the way that polymaths think is totally different than how other people think.
How
And
do
it's
other
actually,
people think?
sorry?
How do other people think? How do non-polymaths think? What's that like?
Linear. The linear thinkers think linear sometimes, or at least that's how I thought they would. Or they kind of just they follow orders sometimes, or they create whatever personality they are. They create something that isn't really there. But I think polymaths are more natural system thinkers.
Okay.
They perceive systems instead of processes. I don't know whether that's true for everyone. For me, I can create processes very easily, and I was thinking, why can't everybody do that? But the way I think in systems, and systems don't have fixed boundaries, and they can be, systems don't even exist. So it's a bit hard to define what it is.
Yeah. Do you think actually your medical training, just thinking as well to my own, like we talk about the body in terms of systems, but the body, there's no division between those systems. They are all fully integrated, you know, unless you've got wrong, but they are all fully integrated. And, you know, I think it's actually, that's very good training for getting rid of that way of thinking, actually, because you have to take away all those kind of boundaries, even though you learn the body in those within those boundaries, when you actually put it into practice, you don't. So maybe that's a big part of how you've managed to do that. That's just occurred to me now. Light bulb moment.
Yeah, I love that example. And now we know that we're not just the body, we're many organisms on the body, in the body, even in the brain there are organisms that are not us. So how can we think that we are so alone and so important? We're not. We are part.
Yes, I mean, there's more bacteria in our bodies than there are cells of us. I mean, who knew? Ah, there you go. That's another reason to have your Yakult. So how did then this, with part of the octopus movement then is building our human mycelium and our network of people. So one thing that I find surprising about polymaths, despite them having so many interests, is we're not very good often at linking up with each other and kind of creating our own polymathic networks. I'm inventing all these words around adjectives for polymaths, but you know what I mean. How can we do that better, and why are we not naturally better and more inclined at it? Is it because we're all following our own curiosities, or how can we do it better?
I don't know why we're not good at it, but I know that I've created such a space.
And how'd you do that?
I just started to write about polymaths by what I observed within me and with other polymaths on LinkedIn. And then people came, and I created a bi-weekly Zoom call called Networking Coffee. And everybody who is interested can join.
No.
And I'm the facilitator, and I create boundaries so everybody has the space and doesn't kind of talk for hours.
Yes, well, I suppose that would be a risk, wouldn't it, with polymaths? And so what kind of things do you talk about? Is it more kind of, is it general interest topics, or kind of, having a bitch about the linear thinkers, or is it, support? What kind of things do polymaths bring to that?
Mostly stuff that interests me and I think could interest anybody. So once it was education system, yesterday was transformation, once it was economy and stuff like this. So I know the people in the group, and I know how their interests are. They're, I would say, all over the place because I'm not English, but in English all over the place means kind of, but they are very diverse, I should say.
Yes, all over the place. It's, yes, my interests certainly are. So kind of scattered interests, and you bring them together. So they're kind of just for sharing kind of knowledge and interests, and kind of social kind of really chit chat and stuff.
Yeah, what I think once we should change the world into a better place because stuff is going wrong. And so I take a topic which could lead to that transformation if people would listen to it. So
And
it's
you
more
mentioned
than
earlier
just,
that polymaths aren't the best listeners. How can that be? So do they
that's
listen?
what you mean because you've never been there.
No, that's what.
Learn it.
Oh, okay. I can
So
learn how to listen.
they learn to talk more concise, and they learn to also listen. And then when they've learned to listen, they really appreciate it over time.
I see. I'm beginning to wonder if listening is like being a good kisser or having a sense of humor. There's a few things like this. Being inclusive is another one. Everyone thinks that they're doing it, but lots of people aren't doing it very well. How would somebody who's not a good listener know that they're not a good listener? I'm saying this with a degree of self-awareness.
Oh, that's how can I answer this question? For example, by asking themselves reflective questions. What
Okay.
did the other people say? And if the people are regularly in the networking coffee, they're interested, and they're interested in hearing what the others say because they are all polymaths, and then they're all talking interesting things, and those things are sometimes great aha moments for them, and they can build it into their own worldview.
Yeah. No, it sounds great. I think I want to come to these coffee meetings, to be honest. But it often surprises me. There's a lot of very intelligent people talking about very interesting things to a high degree of, with a high degree of knowledge and insight. And still, they find it difficult to make an impact in the world or to have a positive impact. And it seems to be really difficult to be someone. Lots of people who are, would fit that description really struggle with that. Why does the world not appreciate polymath and multi-potential people as much as they should, given how much they have to offer?
My opinion is because we created silos and we defined that money is the highest value that we can have up to now. But I think now this won't work anymore.
What's going to replace money then?
We need to collaborate.
Okay.
We need to care for each other. We need to care for the world. We are too many of us, and people are empty and getting psychologically sick and stuff like this. This is not sustainable.
No, that's true. I mean, self-care is a struggle, and now I've got to start caring for other people as well, even the ones I might not like. Barbara, I don't know how I feel about this. But okay, I'll take your word for it and I'll get on board. What kind of, you mentioned about the world needing to become a better place and we need to like have a positive impact. What's the biggest unsolvable problem facing, I suppose, the world that polymaths in particular are well positioned to solve? And what can your coffee morning do to like be the heroes of that?
I think there are a lot of problems, and everybody is interested in different fields. A polymath can learn anything that he or she is interested in.
Yeah.
But they have to get interested in first. And it's interesting that it's like a web of interests and of interests that come together in one person. And then if many persons with many interests come together, I think it's something like the octopus movements as well. It's like the mycelium in a forest linking the trees together.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a bit like that. It's like kind of it's like its own organism kind of organizing itself over different evolutions. Yeah, very good. Some polymaths can be called erudite as well. Well, that's certainly good. And yeah, thank you very much for that link, Planetary Systems. I was going to ask, I have just popped the question right out of my head though. Polymaths, sustainable. How can polymaths then sustain that change within themselves? They've started accepting themselves. They've accepted that they're a whole person, that they've got lots to offer. They've gone to see you. You've got them back in flow. They're reinforcing it with your coffee mornings. How can they sustain that? How can we make that a self-sustaining thing over time so that they can keep making positive impact?
To work or do what really lights them up is a key thing. It's called purpose. And this is, I have a 12 weeks course for polymaths who actually want to come in flow. It's called Stock to Flow, where I teach many techniques. Amongst other, I teach a meditation that is consisting in breathing technique, mindfulness, stuff that I have from singing, grounding, and a mantra meditation. And if you do that regularly, your brain changes. So it's always easier. Huh?
Into what?
Into being more relaxed, being more present, being less tired. I'm doing it daily. I couldn't exist anymore. I started to do that during COVID, and the effect is so big. I don't want to miss out on it.
Well, no, I'm sure it is. It certainly beats my practice during COVID, which is just screaming into a pillow for half an hour of every day. I haven't kept it up, but yeah, interesting. Yes, you've made me think there. So mindfulness is one thing, and meditations and mantras, that's one part of it. And what other techniques are there? Are there any techniques that might surprise us, or anything that you've taken from your Cuban musician days?
So in the 12 weeks course, I integrate creative things to try out, to come into creative flow. I have some trauma healing techniques, all that I think that a polymath needs. There are many tools, so that a polymath needs to be really busy taking a course, because normally when you take a course, after 2 weeks, you know it all.
Yeah.
And then you're getting bored. But I don't want to bore people, because I don't want to be bored myself. So it's an adventure for the whole 12 weeks. And people called it life-changing and dot connecting, and we're very happy.
Oh, that sounds great. That sounds really fantastic. What then, have you got any techniques so polymath's interests can go anywhere? Is there any, but sometimes they don't go where we want them to go. Like our interest doesn't go where we need it to go, and where we really we want it to go, but we don't really want it to go, so it doesn't go there. Can we trick our interest around? Can we, in any ways we can kind of fake it with the interest until our brain kind of tags along? It doesn't seem to work for me, but maybe you know some better techniques.
Yeah, I don't think start in the head, start in the feet. Be aware of your feet, how your feet are grounded, how your feet are standing on the floor. And then let this influence your breathing. And then you're already more relaxed. And then go on from there. Change your posture, stuff like that.
And then from the place of relaxation, then you're better able to choose your interests and maybe even choose something that you're not normally interested in, or
no, it's not just okay. If you're wanting to know the interests, you can I use the Ikigai, and I have made it in a special way to work with it, and then you find out what really lights you up, or it's a conversation with people that love you and know already. Maybe your closest friends know already what would be your purpose, but you don't know.
But how can a polymath who's not interested in something? So sometimes as a polymath, you've got to try and find in interest. We've got to make ourselves interested in something that's not very interesting. Like for work, for example, they say, "Oh, can you create a report on this?" And it's like, wah, wah. And as polymath, the brain just doesn't want to go there. How can we trick our brains into being interested in this, even though it's really not very interesting at all? Can we? Is it possible?
Stuff I use for myself if I have to do some tasks that I didn't really like to do as a doctor. One, I was working on my handwriting and tried to write very beautifully. Now I have the computer, so I have to find other things, or I want to find ways to make it the easiest possible for me, or I'm more interested into persons. I think you can trigger your interest.
Okay.
But if you're in the totally wrong place, where you have to fill out boxes of information, change your job. You're a waste. It's a waste of your brain energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you end up like Matilda and you've got all these telekinetic powers and it's just, oh my God. Yeah. Awful. So what action then, Barbara, can our listeners, the linear and the non-linear thinking alike, do to really start moving themselves towards that flow? Apart from taking your wonderful course, is there anything that they can do at home? It sounds like, well, you tell us.
I think do many things that interest you. Don't limit yourself and enjoy what you're doing. And another thing is go outside. Work, live with the circadian rhythm of nature, sleep enough, go outside, enjoy your life.
Yeah. Okay. So hear that, listeners? You have to get outside and just go where you're interested in. I did that once. I won't even begin to tell you where I ended up. But anyway.
Where?
I couldn't
I'm
tell
curious.
you.
Polymaths, the main thing of Polymaths is they're really curious. So where did you go?
It's a daytime show, Barbara. It's not for this audience. But
Okay.
come to the late night show and I'll tell you all about it. That brings this week's episode of the Octopus Movement podcast to a close. My sincere thanks to Dr. Barbara Kleeb for sharing her wisdom, her insights, and her multipotential mind with us today. Barbara, if anyone would like to reach out with you, if they want to find out where your course is, if they want to connect and come to your coffee morning, where can they find you?
So the best thing to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook, but I'm more lazy there. I have Instagram and all this stuff that people need to have. But if you really want to reach me, come on LinkedIn, send me a message, and I will get back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And of course, if you have any questions about how you can join the Octopus Movement or want to discuss other curiosities that polymaths might have, feel free to reach out to me, Aidan Gillen-Bronze on LinkedIn, or visit the website www.theoctopusmovement.org. Never forget that every mind has the potential to be an octopus mind. So embrace your unique way of thinking, join the movement, and make something tentacular happen. Our podcast returns at the same time every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I look forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks' time. I hope you're enjoying Autism Awareness Month and keep being aware of autism until the end of the month. See you then. Bye.
Thank you.